Welcome back to Boilers and Beyond. I'm Jordan Jones. Less than 4 weeks remain until Purdue kicks off the 2024 season. The Countdown to Kickoff series marches on here on Boilers and Beyond. Fall camp is underway. The acclimation period, I believe, is now over. This week they'll have the pads on at practice. And, when you see the highlights, when you get the camp reports, you're going to have a little bit more real football to talk about when guys start hitting each other. But today, we're going to talk about Purdue's schedule with a couple minutes on all 12 of Purdue's opponents, early outlook, thing or two to know about each of them, kind of how Purdue stacks up on paper at this point against all 12 of them. We'll touch them all, and then we'll talk about the schedule a little bit in general. Wrap up with Q&A time. We've got some schedule-specific question, and then one very big picture question that is going to be a long, almost a full segment in its own to wrap up the show. So we got a lot to get to. Let's jump on in here. We'll start. What do we know? What don't we know? What's most relevant? We'll start with Indiana State here. This is Purdue's season opener. August 30th, we are 27 days away as I record this. Purdue's got some history with Indiana State. I believe they've played them 6 times overall. Last time was 2 years ago. 56-0 Purdue win. Aiden O'Connell didn't play in the second half. This is not a good program. Indiana State has really struggled with just 3 wins in the past 2 seasons. It plays in a fairly difficult conference and was picked to finish 10th out of the 11 schools in that league this year. Not a great team. It's hard to gather how much FCS schools are committed to winning because football isn't really a moneymaker for most of these schools. It's more of an enrollment thing and more of a, hey, we have football type of deal. But it does not seem like they're all too concerned about the success of the football program down in Terre Haute. You can play decent FCS teams. Look at Colorado opening with North Dakota State, Oklahoma State opening with South Dakota State. Those are games you don't want to schedule because those are way more challenging than you want them to be. This is kind of what you want. This is a dress rehearsal for Purdue. At least it better be. Style points don't always have to be a thing. There's something to be said. There's a fine line between running it up blatantly on a team and just truly throttling them and being the better team by a mile. That's what you want with Purdue here. You don't want to have to use the entire playbook. You don't want to have to do much beyond a very basic schematic game plan. You don't want to show a whole lot on film. You want to line up and just pound this team because it's not a good team. You want to show that you're aggressively dominant over them and that by the end of the game, it looks like you kind of ran it up because you beat them by so much. Purdue could really benefit from a dominant performance, and Purdue could really benefit from getting to the point in this game where, like you did 2 years ago against Indiana State, your starters are sitting the whole second half or most of the second half. You'll want to get them a lot of reps because you do have a week 2 bye before you play Notre Dame. You want to get the right number, but you don't want to have these starters playing deep into the fourth quarter. This should be a game Purdue wins dominantly, and it's really the only game on the schedule you can say that about. As I said, Purdue has a week 2 bye, which I'll talk about more in a little bit. Not advantageous if you're Purdue, but week 3, Purdue has its second game of the year, and Notre Dame comes to town for the first time since 2013, a game that I still cannot believe Purdue actually kept close. That was a horrendous Darrell Hazel team that somehow stuck with Notre Dame. And did Purdue have the lead in the fourth quarter? I don't remember, but It might have. That Purdue was right in that game. The rivalry returns for the next 5 years. And what really interests me about the Purdue-Notre Dame rivalry here in 2024 is that there is a new generation of Purdue fans who either grew up in the last 10 years and weren't used to Purdue playing Notre Dame because they've never really seen it, or they came to Purdue in the last 10 years and became a Purdue fan from going there, but they never saw Purdue play Notre Dame, where they played every year from, the 40s or 50s through 2014. This is not really a rivalry anymore because it's been paused for a decade for the most part, but it's going to be fun to see this game happen again. It brings back a lot of memories for me growing up as a kid, going to this game when it would be a night game at Ross-Ade under the lights on ABC. There is the Purdue connection of Marcus Freeman being on Darrell Hazel's staff. He's recruited at a high level in South Bend, and Notre Dame hopes that this can be the year that it breaks out and reaches the college football playoff and maybe wins a college football playoff game. It's going to be a physical Notre Dame team. They're going to be physical on the lines of scrimmage. That's going to be the challenge for Purdue here. They're going to run the ball. It's a physical offensive line. Riley Leonard's a true dual threat quarterback who can really run with it, coming from Duke. He is a good quarterback. Under Brian Kelly, when he was there, once he kind of got Notre Dame figured out after cleaning up the Charlie Weiss mess, Notre Dame rarely lost games that it wasn't supposed to. Notre Dame took care of business really, really well, kind of like what Penn State does right now under James Franklin. They don't necessarily beat the really high-level teams, but they don't trip on their own shoelaces very much. They take care of business really well, and that means Purdue's going to have to play an excellent game to have a chance here if that continues. We have seen Notre Dame lose a couple of games it shouldn't under Freeman. That Marshall game, losing to Stanford. Last year, things cleaned up a little bit. We'll see what it looks like this year, because this looks like it's going to be a good Notre Dame team. Purdue then goes out to Oregon State for the final non-conference game, return trip from the 2021 season opener. That was in Ross-Ade Stadium, and they're in a really, really tough spot to sit here and preview because Oregon State is, no longer a power conference program. Oregon State is lost their coach, lost a lot of their roster. They lost their conference affiliation. This is an Oregon State team that is almost unrecognizable compared to what it has been the last few years when it's been really good. Jonathan Smith did a great job there, and of course we get to talk about him here in a little bit, but this is a tough spot with where the game is scheduled because you come off of playing a really physical team, the good old body blow theory. Purdue's going to hope that doesn't take place. In terms of body clocks, it's an 8:30 Eastern time kickoff, 5:30 out there. That's going to be a little different. I think I saw where Purdue's going to fly out a day early. Very common practice, but yeah, I don't really know. I don't know. I don't know what to expect from Oregon State. This is a game Purdue's got to have. You cannot lose this game, especially, almost assuming you lose to Notre Dame. This is not one you can afford to trip up in. Purdue needs it badly. It's another swing game, and we're going to talk about a lot of these. Purdue's got another one the next week against Nebraska. These games are games that if Purdue wants to get to the bowl game, if Purdue wants to go over that 4.5 win total and get to 6, these are the swing games that are going to determine whether it happens or not. And with Nebraska, they come to Ross-Ade, years of underachieving in recent memory. Since Nebraska came to the Big Ten, it's made everyone skeptical of the Cornhuskers every year. And of course, there is always a lot of buzz around Nebraska because it's a program that generates a lot of buzz. It has one of the most passionate fan bases in the sport. It desperately wants to get back to where it once was, and you have to give them credit for that. They're out here trying. Maybe I'm taking the bait a little bit, but I do think Nebraska is going to be competitive this year. I think they're going to be improved. Remember, Nebraska might have had the second worst quarterback play in the country last year, behind only Iowa. Nebraska beat Purdue up pretty good. I know that game kind of gets lost in memory because I think most of Purdue's fan base was watching a basketball exhibition game at the same time instead, but Purdue got smoked in that game. Nebraska thoroughly dominated Purdue. The defense is going to be really stout again, and it's probably all going to come down to what Dylan Raiola can do. 5-star true freshman at quarterback, kind of from the family of Nebraska royalty. If he is a difference maker, if he is good as a true freshman, this is going to be a really difficult game for Purdue. If you're Purdue, you have to try to capitalize on that inexperience. It'll only be, his 4th or 5th start? You've got to get after him. You got to rattle him. Matt Rule's a really good coach, and this is part of why I give Nebraska the benefit of the doubt. This is not a Scott Frost situation. This is someone who's proven that he can win. He did it at Temple. He did it at Baylor. Neither of those are really easy places to win, and he won fairly quickly. Nebraska was a win away from going to a bowl game last year, and they lost their last 4 games, I think. Nebraska wins one more game last year and gets to a bowl. I think the feeling about all of this is a little different. I'm going to go out on a limb and say Nebraska gets back to a bowl this year. Whether it includes a win over Purdue, I don't know. But for Purdue to get back to a bowl, this is another one of those games it needs. You know the story. It's been a little while since Purdue took down Wisconsin. Since 2003, to be exact, when Purdue won a nail-biter up in Camp Randall Stadium. And even worse, in that time frame, 2004 and 2018 are really the only 2 times it's been all that close. And Wisconsin has thoroughly dominated this series. Year 1 did not go really well for Luke Fickell relative to expectations, though. This year, it's a bit of a mixed bag of projections. I think some of the enthusiasm about the Fickell hire has died down after last year, especially after losses to Northwestern and Indiana late in the season. Tyler Van Dyke from Miami is a really interesting quarterback to lead that offense. He showed some flashes at Miami of really high-level play, but he never was able to put it together consistently. That just wasn't something that happened. It's not the Wisconsin of old that wants to play 3 yards in a cloud of dust all day, but it's not like all the buzz when you hire a guy with air raid principles is that it's going to be Mike Leach or Hal Mummy or something. Certainly not that. It's a blend. Camp Randall's been a house of horrors for Purdue. Purdue has not played well there. Yeah, you'll remember a couple years ago, was Purdue favored in that game? And it was over before it started. It was like 14-0, 3 minutes into the game. This is going to be a really good test to see how much Purdue's defense has improved. I don't think this Wisconsin offense is going to be awesome. I know they think they made some nice additions at receiver in the portal, and I'm sure it will have a good offensive line. But Wisconsin pushed Purdue around pretty good last year, right out of the gate. If Purdue can show that it's improved, that would be very, very welcomed. Again, I don't think this is a swing game. I wouldn't categorize it as that. But man, if Purdue could go up and get this one, that would really, really fire up some folks. And then on the flip side, Purdue has dominated Illinois in recent memory. Purdue has Purdue has controlled this series for the better part of 25 years or so, because Joe Tiller really did too. Jeff Brom, 5-1 against Illinois. Walters is 1-0. Even Darrell Hazel went 2-2. He won like 3 Big Ten games. 2 of them were against Illinois. Both of those were in Champaign. Danny Hope, 3-1 against Illinois, etc. Purdue's done really well in this series. And it comes, ironically, as I had Beef House for dinner tonight over in Covington. There's a natural storyline of Ryan Walters coaching against Brett Bielema. That's been, much made of that. I don't think it's that big of a deal, but it's the natural storyline. It's a big year for both of these programs. Purdue obviously wants to improve from year 1 to year 2. Illinois wants to show that 2022 season wasn't just a blip on the radar. Last year was a bummer. It didn't go the way Illinois wanted. Same deal. Year 2 for the quarterback. Hudson Card, year 2 at Purdue. Luke Altmaier, year 2 at Illinois. They want to get back to where they were before Ryan Walters left. Purdue has not lost in Champaign since 2010. Crazy stat. They've played every year since 2010, alternating West Lafayette and Champaign. And Purdue has not lost there since 2010. I can't believe that's real. Swing game here. It's a very winnable road game, but it's far from a given. This is the toss-up type. These are the games Purdue has to win to get to a bowl. A game that is a little bit more far-fetched for Purdue to win is going to be Oregon. A lot has changed with these two programs since the home-and-home series in 2008 and 2009 produced 2 unbelievable football games. Pair of heartbreakers for Purdue. Oregon has rocketed towards the top of the sport since then. Oregon has buy-in at the absolute highest level that few other schools have. Purdue does not. Now, Purdue has greatly improved its buy-in in football, and more to come on that later in this episode. But Oregon is a true national title contender. It's a school that wants to be in that mix every year. You can't say that about too many teams in this sport. Oregon's one of them. They went out and got Dylan Gabriel to play quarterback for them. The guy started like 5 years in college. He was at UCF and then Oklahoma and now Oregon. He's played a ton of football. And this is the most talent he'll have ever had around him at wide receiver, with some really good players, on the offensive line. The real strength of Oregon's. There's a ton of NIL resources up there. That's not to be ignored. It shows with the roster. Don't hate the player, hate the game. I mean, Oregon is all in on trying to win a national title before Phil Knight dies. All right, let's see if they can do it. This is a roster that's built to do it. Dan Lanning is an awesome coach, a true young star in the coaching industry. Of the 4 new schools coming into the Big Ten this year, Oregon is the best suited to win immediately, and I would say the best suited to win in the long term. We'll see what Southern Cal can do, but year 1, right away, Oregon's clearly the best of the newcomers. Purdue gets a bye week after that Friday night game against Oregon. It will be due for one badly. And then it heads into the closing stretch, starting with Northwestern. Admittedly, I don't know what to expect from Northwestern. Last year was as bizarre of a year, of a 6-month period of a football program, of Northwestern from June or July, whenever the Pat Fitzgerald allegations came out through the bowl game win over Utah. Crazy. Just crazy. That team had no business going 7-5 and then winning an 8th game in a bowl. But that's what happened. In that sense, I think Northwestern's due for a massive regression. Remember, Since 2019, Northwestern was awful in 19, really good in 2020, but the COVID year had results that are hard to explain. Awful in 21. Was that the year? 2022 was the year they won just one game. I think they won 2 or 3 in 21. And then last year they win 8. I don't think the roster got that much better. It's hard. I don't know what to say here. Northwestern really rallied around David Braun. He was an awesome interim coach, got the full-time gig. That adversity that you rally around, though, that's all gone. You've had a full 9 months since you played your last game, basically, for that to all wear off. Now it's just normal that he's there. And we'll see if the emotional highs and lows have mellowed out a bit. Purdue lost this game last year as soon as it was announced that Hudson Card wasn't playing. Nick Scorton missing the game didn't help either. Corday Sidner was great in his absence, but the game was lost as soon as it was announced Hudson Card wasn't playing. And Purdue almost came back and tied it late, wasn't able to get in the end zone. It's Northwestern. It's the same story every year. If you can play a good, clean game against Northwestern, you're probably going to win because you're the more talented team. You get this game at home, November. Who knows what these teams look like health-wise. And that's the case for everything from this point on. But I don't know what to expect. You're going to have to play well. Again, swing game. Purdue comes off Northwestern and enters a really rough 2-week stretch. It goes to Ohio State, where Purdue obviously does not have the more talented roster. Ohio State might have the best roster in the country. It's that or Georgia. This program has lost 3 in a row to Michigan and hasn't won a national title since 2014, which at Ohio State, that's getting a bit long. It desperately wants to change that. It already recruits at a crazy elite level, where Georgia and Alabama are the only other 2 programs who operate in the same weight class on a year-in, year-out basis. You factor in the transfer portal, where Ohio State loaded up with NIL to bring guys back who could have gone pro. You look at JT Tuimoloau, you look at Denzel Burke, you look at Jack Sawyer. Those guys could have all gone pro and probably been drafted in a pretty good spot. They come back. You get a Quinshad Judkins, who was SEC Freshman of the Year, running back at Ole Miss. Caleb Downs was an All-American as a true freshman at Alabama last year. Dude is remarkable, and they get him to transfer to Ohio State. Just don't enter this game with high expectations. Ohio State's talent is insane. And this is one of those that I almost think if Purdue's got some guys that are semi-banged up that you can get back for, the last couple games, you might hold them out of this one. I'm not saying you go over there and play turtle, but it's going to be a tough one. Ohio State is just on another stratosphere compared to everyone in the Big Ten. Besides Oregon, Michigan, and Penn State right now. A different sport that Ohio State's playing. Purdue comes home and gets Penn State. And this could be a really fun weekend in West Lafayette. If the football team does well, you're looking at Purdue playing Alabama and hoops in Mackey on Friday night and then having the last home game of the year on Saturday. Could be a fun weekend. This is a really big year for Penn State. 12-team playoff is here. Penn State might benefit more than anyone in the country from the 12-team playoff because they would have made that thing a ton in recent years, but they never made the 4-teamer. Now it's here. It's kind of now or never. It feels like. It's a really good roster. The defense is going to be really good as always. The offense has been solid, just not in those big games. I don't know what to make of Drew Aller. He's been a pretty good game manager against everyone besides Michigan and Ohio State. He plays very safe, 25 touchdowns to 2 picks last year. But if he can take that step forward, he was a very highly touted quarterback out of high school. If he takes that step forward, this game looks pretty tough. Penn State's a really good team. If not, if Aller is just fine, you're still looking at a tough game, but it could be one of those where you can dream a bit. It could be one of those where you hang in there and see what happens in a game where the ball bounces in funky ways and balls get tipped in the air and weird things happen in football. If you can do that, you're thrilled with that if you're Purdue, because you close with a good stretch. You go to Michigan State on a Friday night. There are a lot of questions up there. They made a great coaching hire, getting Jonathan Smith. That was very well done. Michigan State was a mess last year with all the Mel Tucker stuff. That team looked like it folded. I mean, I don't want to make any accusations here, but when you watched them play, they were dead. They had nothing going on. Got a big-time quarterback. Aiden Childs follows Jonathan Smith. He's a young guy, highly touted recruit, showed some good stuff as a freshman, playing alongside DJ Uiagalelei out there. He's their guy, and they're going to, if there are some growing pains for him, they're going to live with it. The roster lost a lot in the transfer portal, but it also got a lot. It's one of those where it's hard to project what it's going to look like. Again, late November game. I don't think Michigan State's super deep. I don't know that Purdue is either. We'll get into the position previews the next 2 weeks. Depth is going to be important in this one. And where is each team at here? Is Purdue in a bowl hunt? Is Michigan State in the bowl hunt? Are they either of them have a bowl game locked up, or are they both out of it? There is one in it. It's going to be interesting to see where the teams are at there. Friday night in East Lansing in late November, that's going to be freezing. So if any of you are making the trip up, pack warm clothes. That's going to be freezing. But a really interesting game. Again, swing game. That's one Purdue can win, but it's not going to come easy. Road games rarely do. And of course, you close out with Indiana, where there is some real enthusiasm down there for the first time in a couple years. Curt Cignetti comes in. I thought that was a good hire for Indiana. He's a guy who has been a good coach everywhere he's been. He did a great job at James Madison, leading them from the FCS to the FBS, where they didn't miss a beat. They were good right away. He's been contributing to the hype a lot. He's been saying provocative things. He came out at the basketball game and said Purdue sucks and we're going to beat Michigan and Ohio State, yada, yada. Who cares? I mean, he might as well. You got to get the fans fired up. Tough job. We all know that. Brand new roster. I follow Indiana fairly closely because I have so many friends that are big Indiana fans. I was looking at the Athlon magazine last week, and you're just looking at this roster, looking at the two deeps. I don't know who most of these guys are. A lot of James Madison transfers, and it's going to be interesting to see how they translate to a higher level of competition. Some guys do it really well. Some guys don't. We've seen that at Purdue in the transfer portal era. Purdue's had some good guys transfer up from a lower level. Purdue's had some guys not. It happens. It's part of it. They got Curtis Rourke, who's a great case study here. Really good MAC quarterback at Ohio. Played a lot of football there. But again, Big Ten schedule now, how high is that upside? They've got a good security blanket as a backup in Taven Jackson, another high upside guy. But he was inconsistent last year. There's enthusiasm down there, probably for the first time since early in 2021, before that season fell off a cliff. Vibes are high now. Can they ride that wave? If so, how long? A really interesting bucket game this year. And it could be one of those where, like 2017 and 2018, maybe these teams both come in at 5-6, and the winner goes to a bowl and the loser doesn't. That is very much on the table here. going to be an interesting bucket game this year. Purdue's had a ton of success in this series recently, winning 5 of the last 6, a lot of those in convincing manner. We'll see what it looks like this year. Going to be a good one. But a few overall thoughts here on the schedule. I know this has kind of been a whirlwind whip around, but wanted to get on everyone. Couple thoughts here. Week 2 bye week is a real bummer for Purdue. That is no fault of Purdue's. Originally, when the schedule came out like 8 years ago or something, maybe 5 years ago, I don't know. But a long time ago, there was a schedule that had Purdue playing at Illinois week 1 to open up this season. And when the Big Ten expanded, all the Big Ten schedule got nixed. So Purdue had Indiana State lined up for what is week 2, then Notre Dame, then Oregon State, because you had a Big Ten game week 1. Purdue got Indiana State moved up a week, but it kind of has to eat the week 2 bye. Yes, you get 2 weeks to prepare for Notre Dame, and that's lovely. But I would much rather have that bye week, say, after Nebraska or after Oregon State or somewhere in there, than after you play a pretty weak opponent in week 1, where you hope you don't, get beat up much. I mean, you should be in good shape after that. Then you take a week off. That's not ideal. It's a 2 bye week year, which is nice, I guess. So you don't have your only bye week coming in week 2, but Purdue doesn't get to capitalize a ton on that 2 bye week year because it has one so early. Look, there's no hiding it. This is a really, really tough schedule. And when you look at projections for Purdue, I think my overall thought on this roster right now is that it's going to be notably improved from last season. But how much better will the record look against a really tough schedule? I have harped a ton on Purdue's non-conference scheduling approach in recent years, and I've talked about it plenty on this podcast before. It's not ideal to have the Notre Dame series resuming from a pure strength of schedule standpoint because Notre Dame's pretty good. It's been remarkably consistently strong over the past decade. The return trip to Oregon State's not a cakewalk, but adding in the 3 West Coast schools doesn't help. Of course, Purdue did benefit from the Big Ten West schedule over the years. You get both Ohio State and Penn State, and you get Oregon. Those are the 3 schools with the top odds to win the Big Ten right now. Those are the 3 teams in the top 3 teams in the preseason poll from Cleveland.com. That's what makes this schedule so rough. The non-conference doesn't help, but getting those 3, that's what makes it really, really tricky because I don't like saying it, but those 4 you're kind of chalking up as losses. And I think the only game you can truly safely chalk up as a win is Indiana State. So you have 7 swing games on the schedule that you probably need to win 5 of to get to a bowl. And that's a daunting proposition. But again, you can win. None of those 7 games would shock me if Purdue won. So kind of jumping into Q&A, because the first question is on this kind of train of thought a bit. If the 2024 team played the 2023 schedule, how would it have fared, and would it have won more games? Purdue went 4-8 last season. And if you look at the losses from last year, I certainly think an improved Purdue team could have beaten Fresno State, where Purdue kind of withered late in that game. Purdue's defense wore down, and Fresno State moved the ball really easily in the second half. An improved Purdue defense, yeah, you can hold Fresno State under 39 points, and your 35 probably is enough to win that. You have a better offense, you could put up more points maybe. Purdue's loss to Syracuse was so self-inflicted, but it's not crazy to think that a better Purdue team could have won that game. Can Purdue get past Deacon Hill leading Iowa? Yeah, It's easier said than done with Iowa because Iowa went 10-2 last year with Deacon Hill starting the majority of the season. But yeah, Purdue, that's a game Purdue could have won. If Purdue's healthy, I think Purdue beats Northwestern anyways with Hudson Card. A better team? Yeah, no doubt. So I think Purdue could have gone 6-6 last year with this year's roster. Could it have flirted with 7-5? Yeah, the Big Ten West wasn't very good. Yeah, why not? I think it would have been better. And my guess is Purdue would have gotten to a bowl game. And that's just kind of the hard part of college football is you need your good years to line up with scheduling luck. And, we'll see what Purdue looks like this year, but it didn't get a lot of scheduling luck. Whereas last year, the non-conference was tricky, but the conference schedule wasn't bad besides Ohio State and Michigan. You weren't winning those ones. Next one, got this one on Twitter today. A good question. Said the secondary is very talented but very unproven, which I agree with. Looking forward to talking about that next week on the defense preview. Everyone keeps mentioning Notre Dame or Oregon as a possible upset, but given the improvement from playing tough competition, I believe Penn State at home may actually be a toss-up game when we get to it. Is that too bold of a take? And he says by toss-up, a spread of 3 points or less. So from the point spread perspective, it would take drastic overachievement by Purdue coupled with drastic underachievement by Penn State for that spread to be a field goal. Penn State has 4 games on DraftKings right now that I looked at this morning that you can bet. Penn State's 10.5-point favorites at West Virginia, a team that I believe won 8 games last year. Penn State is 4-point favorites on the road at Southern Cal, favored by 6.5 at Wisconsin in Camp Randall, and Penn State's a 4-point dog at home against Ohio State. So, I mean, Penn State's more than a field goal favorite at Southern Cal and at Wisconsin, 2 teams that are, surely projected to be better than Purdue right now. We'll see what happens when the toe hits the leather and we start playing real football. For that spread to be 3 points or less, I'd be really, really surprised. In terms of the, improvement from playing tough competition, yes, it's possible that that's how it goes, that you get better from playing some tougher opponents. I think there's validity to that, but it's a double-edged sword because you take a toll physically from playing some of those teams, where Notre Dame is very physical. And Oregon, even though it's very spread out and has a high-flying offense, it's physical up front, and it has a real nice defense. And by this point, you're coming off an Ohio State game where they're very, very loaded on the defensive front, loaded on defense, loaded at the skill positions on offense. So you hope you're healthy. That's the biggest thing. Against a tough schedule, you do worry about injuries. But you do that anyways. It's still football. Under James Franklin, Penn State has taken care of business very well. I think it's like 2 or 3 years in a row now where their only losses have been Michigan and Ohio State, and a couple bowl games in there maybe. But in the regular season, Penn State's doing a great job at beating everyone else in the Big Ten, oftentimes doing it soundly. I don't anticipate Penn State falling off too much, but anything can happen. And this was a question from last week, if I had to pick one of the big 4 for Purdue to spring an upset, it would either be Penn State or Notre Dame. It's a long shot, but yeah, I mean, you never know. You never know. A very blunt one here. Show me a path to a bowl game with this schedule. Yeah, I mean, again, there are 8 games on the schedule that I would not be shocked if Purdue won. There are many of them that I would expect Purdue to win. Indiana State, obviously. those big four, Notre Dame, Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Purdue wins any of those would categorize as shockers. Those would be big upsets. I'd be very impressed if Purdue went to Madison and beat Wisconsin. But would I be truly stunned? No. Outside of the recent history in that series, just a pure line them up, I wouldn't be stunned. I'd be surprised. Purdue will be a sizable underdog in that game. But there could be 6 wins, for sure. If Purdue can stay healthy, and especially at the quarterback position, I mean, that's paramount. Talk about it more on the offense preview, but Purdue's got to have Hudson Card healthy. Purdue can be good in close games. Yeah, it can get to 6, no doubt. September looms really large here. And I'll count Indiana State in there since it's last week of August. The first month of the season. If you're 3-1, you're in awesome shape. You are probably going to be in a bowl game if you can start 3-1. If you're 2-2, it can still happen, but you got to be crisp. You've got to be really dialed in and playing good football the last 2 months of the season. If you're 1-3, it's done. You'd have to run the table against everyone besides Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State. That's a big ask. I don't think that would happen. So I think we'll know by September whether Purdue can make a bowl or not. Maybe by the end of October, we'll know whether Purdue will make a bowl or not. Going to hit the ad read real quick because the last question we got's a long one, and it's one that I've got quite a long answer to. So this episode is brought to you by me. Yes, that's me. When I'm not watching sports, or more accurately, talking about them, I'm talking insurance with the people of Indiana. As an agent with Indiana Farm Bureau Insurance, I want to help you what you've worked hard to achieve. From home and auto to life and business insurance, I'm here to help you. Give me a call at 317-846-5861 or email me at jordan.jones@infarmbureau.com. And let's protect you from life's everyday risks. All right, so this last one's a very big picture one that I got emailed to me last week, and I've been very torn on how to answer it, so we're just going to spill it out. The question is this: is the university's athletic department the problem, or is it the Purdue faithful? Don't the faithful have a major place of accountability in this situation? Let me expand. Every single year since the Tiller era, Purdue football has been bottom feeders. And even so, Purdue continues to sell out games, continues to sell more season tickets. Ticket prices are inflated for a team that rarely wins as many games as you have fingers on one hand. Why would Purdue invest if the faithful is going to pay for a subpar product? It's a great business model for the program, but it's terrible for the consumers who pay for the product. If the faithful continues this ever-true mindset as it pertains to ticket sales, then let's just be prepared for generations of mediocrity. End of question. There's a lot to this one, so let's get into it. To some degree, this is kind of a classic sports question because I'm a huge Chicago Cubs fan, and this is a big thing around Cubs fans where no matter how good the Cubs are, Wrigley Field is always well attended. The Cubs get 3 million fans like every year. So why would the Cubs try to win? They're making money nonetheless. I don't buy the argument from a Cubs perspective, but that's neither here nor there. This isn't a Cubs podcast. Look, one thing, Purdue has not always had awesome attendance at football. It has had great attendance since Jeff Brom made Purdue fun again in 2017. I will never forget the Michigan and the Indiana games that season, where Ross-Ade Stadium was, I believe it sold out for Indiana and was very close for that Michigan game when it was like 200 degrees. But Ross-Ade was packed for the first time in what felt like forever. Purdue's attendance really slipped during the mediocrity of the Danny Hope era, and then it fell off a cliff during the Darrell Hazel era. I mean, no one was going to games at that point. So at that point, no, I disagree that ticket sales were high because the stadium looked awful. Fans rightfully weren't going to those games. The team was awful. We've seen this year, though, to where the question's going. Yes, Purdue's coming off a 4-8 season. It's sold a boatload of season tickets, the most since the Joe Tiller years. I think that's a major positive. I think that's a major, major positive that shows that fans are bought in. Fans want to see Purdue succeed in football. And that's part of the battle. I mean, if you have agnostic fans, you don't stand a chance. You've got to have fan support. Purdue does have history from the athletic department when it comes to some questionable investment in sports in general. Feels like an eternity ago, but Matt Painter was heavily flirting with the Missouri job because he was unhappy with Purdue's investment in coaching salaries. I think probably both for himself and for his assistants. That was a big thing at that time. It got resolved, but it was a thing. Purdue had to renovate Mackey Arena because it was not up to par compared to other Big Ten arenas, just in terms of the arena, not the atmosphere that Mackey provides, but it needed a lot of upgrades, and it did. On the football side, it's been true as well. Purdue did not invest in assistant coaching salaries during the latter part of Joe Tiller's tenure, and that helped contribute to the decline of Purdue football. 06 was a good year. 05 was a train wreck. 07 was fine. Purdue fell apart late, but then 08, 09, 2010, it wasn't great, and that was part of it. Purdue was slower to the arms race when that took place as media rights deals began to grow. I don't remember all the details on it, but I think at one point Purdue was sharing TV revenue with the academic side of the university. That's just insanity. Of course, that's not how it works now, but Purdue finally got a good performance complex with the Kozic Performance Complex, the football center there on the corner of the street at Northwestern and Cherry Lane. That looks great. Took Purdue a while to get there. Purdue didn't have lights until 2017. That's almost so crazy you can't believe it. Rossade badly needed upgrades. The ribbon board in the north end zone in 2019 replaced a dilapidated, tiny little scoreboard. The gigantic video board in the south end zone in 2020 looks tremendous. The renovations last year to put seating in the south end zone, create the Tiller Tunnel, all of that looks awesome. Football is in such a better spot from an investment standpoint now than it was when Mike Babinski took over in 2016. He has been a huge part of Purdue's growth in football, along with Mitch Daniels and the board of trustees, who deserve credit for greenlighting everything and really getting Purdue back to a better spot. In terms of the NIL situation where, maybe the fan base has some responsibility, sure. I mean, with NIL right now, you are relying on fans to donate to that. And that's a complex one because we're changing already with revenue sharing on the horizon in the next year or so. NIL will probably still be around, it will be around. But donating to NIL is different than donating to John Purdue Club, where you get benefits from that with parking and tickets and things like that. Purdue has a very loyal fan base. And again, that's a tremendous positive. That is great. You would rather have that than have fans who just don't care. You can see it with some of the lower level Power 5 schools that don't have that. You got to have a good fan base, and Purdue does. I don't think it's generally a win at all costs type of fan base like you see with, some of the big dogs, Ohio State, like Texas A&M, Tennessee, some of the big time NIL schools that throw money at it and have had mixed bags of results in terms of success. That's fine. I will never come on this podcast and tell fans how to spend their money. You got bigger fish to fry in life. You do you. If you want to donate 4 or 5 figures to NIL every year, cool. You say it's not my thing, cool. You do what you want to do with your money. I don't care. But it does seem like Purdue has made real strides on the NIL front. You can just see it in what Purdue did in the transfer portal compared to what it did the year prior. Night and day. And that's an NIL-driven thing. I said it when the Big Ten added the 4 West Coast schools last summer. It's a real bummer that the timing was what it was because it felt like Purdue had finally caught up to some of the programs that it wants to compete with and that it wants to hurdle over. You're not competing with Michigan, Ohio State, Penn State. You're competing with Iowa, with Illinois, with Indiana, with Michigan State, with Maryland, with Minnesota. Those are the types of schools that you need to be on par or above in terms of an arms race, in terms of just being a better football program than as you look to elevate. And now with Oregon and Southern Cal and a Washington program that looks different, massively different than it did last year, but it still played for a national title. UCLA has untapped potential, I think. That's a tough one, but I don't know that anyone is truly at fault here. I really don't. I get the gist of the question because everyone wants to see Purdue have a more successful football program, but I don't think anyone is at fault. I think Purdue's done a great job catching up. I think the fans recognize that Purdue has done a good job catching up, and fans want a reason to believe. And they're excited about Ryan Walters still, and that's good. If you have a year 2 coach and the fan base has already quit on him, oh boy, that's a whole different problem. As we go into a revenue sharing world, this question gets even more fascinating because I don't know what that looks like yet. And that's for, folks internally to be as best prepared as possible when that all begins, because I don't know what that's going to look like. But I think Purdue's in a good spot just as it pertains to investment. I think Purdue's getting there. I think Purdue has done a good job from the athletic department and from the university-wide perspective of buying into athletics, football included. And we'll see what happens. But again, a fascinating question here, a true onion where there are a lot of layers to it. And everyone's entitled to their opinion. I know there are many opinions on this. These are just kind of my thoughts because I think it's complex. And I don't think anyone specifically is at fault for, Purdue being a little delayed in growing NIL. And Purdue's done a great job over the past decade or so of growing the football program. But that's all I've got for today. This was a long one. If you're still listening, thanks for bearing with me. Next week, we'll be back here continuing the countdown to kickoff. We will preview Purdue's defense as well as special teams, year 2 of the quote-unquote airstrike defense. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the roster. We'll talk about position battles. Send over your questions. You can do that on Twitter at BoilersBeyond. Make sure you're following there. Or you can email the show, boilersandbeyondpod@gmail.com. Be sure you subscribe wherever you get your podcasts so that you don't miss a thing. Until next week, guys, take care and enjoy those fall practice reports.